please excuse my red nose. I don't know what's going on. It's allergy season. Eyes will be watering. So the video that should be going up before this is February wrap-up. I got a great spiel at the beginning of it saying where have I been for the past month. I've been busy dealing with shit. Literally just like all the things. I had a great little, not a rant is too aggressive, but a great little like musing on the state of the world, and I'm not gonna repeat everything because brain tired. But the edited version is you can't pour from an empty cup. If the only thing you can handle doing right now is trying to like take care of yourself, it's okay. It's okay. If you needed to hear that, here's your message for the day. It's okay if today is not a day where you are capable of doing a lot. So we got a hopefully not too long a video, but you know I say that and then I just chit chat about books forever. But hopefully today will be a little bit simpler because I'm just doing my bi-monthly book haul. So this is my book haul of the books that I have acquired in January and February of this year. Let's see, I have acquired 13 books in the past 2 months, and 2 of them I had read before I bought them, and I enjoyed them so much I bought copies to keep, and then another 2 I've already read since buying them. So, alright, let's get into it. Alright, the first book, this is one I've already read. I chatted about this and gushed about it in last month's wrap-up. This is The Highwayman's Folly by Daria Vernon. This is an independently published historical romance. The sequel just came out in March, and I look forward to getting to it very soon. I very much enjoyed it. This was wonderful escapist adventure romance. Lovely cover that definitely has like a vintage feel, but is somehow like updated and like not so Harlequin. But yeah, this is independently published. I think there's a couple of places where you can buy a physical copy, but like I've only found the ebook on Kindle. So I was glad to find a used copy of this on Pango. Hey, recently I filmed a book on haul, little self-promotion here. I filmed a book on haul. A bunch of those books are now featured in my Pango bookstore profile page, if any of the ones in that unhaul happen to pique your fancy. I recently sold 2. I recently just sold Cazadora, and then this morning I just sold The Bride Test. But I think everything else I talked about is still up as of filming this video. But I've got a link for that down below. Not sponsored. I don't think I get anything out of it unless you choose to buy something from me. No pressure. Definitely like search other sellers and find the copy or the price point that works for you, if that is something that you choose to be doing right now. Anyway, I bought this used on Pango, and I'm very glad I did. Okay, the first 4 I'm talking about I bought from Pango. 2 of them, I bought them in sets of 2. So a seller was selling 2 of these together, and then another seller was selling 2 of these together. And I forget which pair went together. But anyway, okay, so the next one I found on Pango was The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. This is a fantasy. Is this YA? I don't know. But it's a fantasy, death magic, awesome cover art. I didn't realize, I'm gonna give you a nice close-up, the illustration style is like threads, or like threads of light. I don't know. I wonder if like there's like textile crafts in this book. That would be really cool. Anyway, this is just, I just had been admiring the cover from afar, and then I saw it in person. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But yeah, fantasy, half British, half Japanese protagonist, death magic. I don't remember all the details, but it sounded really cool, and it was paired with something else that I bought that I really wanted, so cool. And then the next 2 were books that were top reads of the year. Were they both from last year? Or were they... Maybe this one was the year before. Anyway, first we've got The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Very cool book cover with the dual worlds and our love interests. This is a sci-fi parallel universe with a little bit of sort of time travel, because some of these parallel universes are kind of offset in time, with our protagonist Kara, who she works for a firm, a company. There's a lot in here about like capitalism and labor and exploitation, you know, buzzwords for me. But she can jump between parallel worlds because herself in these other worlds has already died. If you try to jump to a world where you still exist, it doesn't happen and things go terribly wrong. But anyway, so she is somebody who can do that, and then she kind of starts to learn that that might not be a coincidence. Anyway, loved it. Great. Another book that was a top read for me was Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi. This has a great, this has a bunch of like non-fantasy and non-science fiction buzzwords for me in terms of like woman in science who is also wrestling with her concept of faith. And this is a book that really understands the difference between like religion as an institution and the concept of faith, and also how science and faith kind of butt heads and the ways in which they are actually quite similar to each other. That is a concept I absolutely love. So I got myself a physical copy, and I still need to get myself a copy of Homegoing because I enjoyed this very much and I would like to read other works by this author. So this is Stories from Mexico, Historias de Mexico. So this, I believe, this is a side-by-side bilingual book, and I think it's like parables and fables and mythologies. So some of them are like very short, so they'll be like the English and the Spanish version. Excuse me, watery. Just one eye is watering like crazy today. I don't know what's going on. But I have a goal of trying to read 4 books a year in Spanish, and my reading level is kind of like advanced middle grade young YA, so I feel like something like this with like mythology and fables and like fairly short stories will, I mean, some of them are like several pages long, will suit me, and hopefully some of these are more like fable, folklore and mythology that is unique to Mexico, which would be really cool, because I feel very well versed in my, you know, my Christian Andersen, my Mother Goose, my Aesop's Fables, and I would like to kind of expand my folklore and mythology repertoire. So this seemed book I acquired. This I bought through Bookshop, and I was supporting a small Black-owned bookstore in Seattle called Estelita's Bookshop. And part of why I chose them was because of pandemic restrictions. They did not have in-person book shopping. They were having some very, very limited in-person community events, but like you couldn't just go there to browse books. So they were really pushing, hey, if you want to support us through buying books, purchase through Bookshop. This was something that was like on their list. This is A Terrible Thing to Waste: Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind by Harriet A. Washington, who is the author of Medical Apartheid, which is another book I would very much like to read. So apart from, you know, racial justice, social justice, and environmental justice, these being things I like, so the idea of like having all of that in one book sounds right up my alley. And then also at work, we just started forming like an environmental justice task force. We are in very early days, but I do think we're gonna start talking about some of this big picture, like environmental racism kind of stuff. It's interesting because like I'm because of my role in my job, I'm really not involved in like big picture, 3-year plan, 5-year plan, you know, mission statement kind of goals kind of planning in the company. I'm very like, what is the tool that you need to buy right now? I need to buy some things right now. I need to problem solve this immediate. I'm very like at the very end of the process working on those very final tangible details. So like big concept planning is not something I'm really used to doing. So it's very interesting to kind of see the bureaucratic process and be like, well, why can't I just like do the thing now? But then also like understand the argument of, if we work this into the company 5-year plan, that helps us actually like allocate funding for it. It helps us like get grants for it. And that means that the people who eventually get tasked with doing these additional tasks can actually get, you know, support from the top down, rather than doing the work and then having to like grasp and ask and beg for support. It's building that support initially. So it's going to take longer to actually get to some like final action items. But I understand the logic of, you know, do we need to hire a full-time person to address something so that people aren't having to add these duties onto an already full work plate? Or, you know, if we're going to have to pay to like recycle some stuff, we already have a budget for that, rather than having to scrounge that out of an already tight budget somewhere else. So anyway, so I'm interested to see if we will ever like, you know, reference this book and like have like a book club around it. Or just like, what can I glean from this that I can use in some of that like big picture planning stuff. So, yes. Cool. Great. All right. Then the last book I purchased, this is all books I purchased in January. Last book I purchased in January was A Snake Lies Waiting by Jin Young, translated by Anna Homewood and Gigi Chang. This is the third book in the Legends of the Condor series. I just talked about this in my February wrap-up. So I had read book 1 and book 2. I got book 4 for Christmas, so then I had to go buy book 3. So, yep, I enjoyed it. And refer to last month's wrap-up for some thoughts. They're kind of vague, because, like, it's third book in the series, and the plot is, like, very meandering and nebulous, and somewhat based in historical fact. In summary, I love the fantasy kung fu fight scenes. I love our focal romance character of Lotus and Guojing. I fucking love Lotus. She is one of like the most enjoyable, bratty, trickster, lovable characters I've ever met, and I love her. And like Guojing is just such like a sweet little bean. Anyway, but yeah, like the whole scope of this fantasy series I find really entertaining. The writing I like a lot more than I was expecting when I had first picked up the series, but I think it was written in the 50s and plus being translated. I know some people kind of have issues getting into the writing style, but I'm like, you know what, I've been doing a lot of like co-immersion with the audiobook, and it's a fun escapist fantasy also. And for how old it is, I do think it's weird to say like, does the story hold up, because there's a whole like cultural divide between me being able to like make that judgment, but like I mean, sometimes I have read some I have in the past tried to read some fantasy classics and just been like, the language, the type of writing of the author has just been too much of a barrier for me to be able to appreciate the story. And I find that like it takes a little getting used to. You know, if it's been a while since I've read one of these books, it takes a little bit for my brain to kind of adjust to the storytelling style, but then like I'm having a great time. So, look at past reviews that I've made of these books if this is something you would want to learn more about. Oh, and did I say, this is translated from the Chinese. This is one of the most famous Chinese fantasy series ever. They compare it to Lord of the Rings. I don't think it doesn't compare in like style of fantasy, but in terms of like how everybody knows about Lord of the Rings, even people who don't read a lot, even people who don't read fantasy, like everyone knows about Lord of the Rings. Everyone knows about J.R.R. Tolkien. It's that kind of famous. It is a cultural touchstone. So that was it for January. Now let's get into February. So these first two books I got from a little used bookstore near my work. I found a Spanish copy of Ghosts. It's called Fantasmas, which is something like I've seen this artwork and I've seen this graphic novel around, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it until I found a copy in Spanish. But I think this is, I think it's queer. It's definitely Latin. I need to actually Google like what is the word we are using now for Latinx. But yeah, it's like you see the papel picado banners in here. And I think what this is about is like there's some sisters. One of them is sick with cystic fibrosis and they move to a new town, and it's the kid's like, I don't want to move to a new town. I don't want to leave all my friends. But they move to this town and it's inhabited by ghosts. And they start, I don't know. One of them is like really excited to like make friends with the ghosts, and the other one is like kind of resistant to it. I think that's kind of what I've picked up on. But anyway, I thought that it was really cool to find like a best-selling thing in Spanish in this little bookshop. And I feel like, you know, a graphic novel is a great way to try to read a secondary language. So got that. And then the other book, I had gone into the bookstore because I was about to purchase a book from Pango, and then I was like, you know what? Let me just go see if this. I just have a feeling. I wonder if this bookstore has this book in this edition, because I was really in love with this cover. And this is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. Hold on, let me find a not weird font. Yep, Mikhail Bulgakov. Translated with notes by Richard Pevar and Larissa Volokonsky. So this is another translated work that I would like to read. It's just like a classic, and sometimes a lot of classics, the premise is just like meh, whatever. But the premise of this sounds really interesting. And hopefully, hold on, let me find the plot description. Because the plot description sounds really interesting. I'm just curious how much of this description is like literal and how much of it is symbolic. Because what might happen is that like the characters and these descriptions and like the fantasy elements might be very symbolic and thematic and literary, and will go over my head and I will just feel stupid while I read it. And I don't know, maybe it's actually like a really whimsical, clever satire romp. But let me read you this premise. An audacious revision of the stories of Faust and Pontius Pilate, The Master and Margarita is recognized as one of the essential classics of modern Russian literature. The novel's vision of Soviet life in the 1930s is so ferociously accurate that it could not be published during its author's lifetime and appeared only in a censored edition in the 1960s. I mean, we love us some subversive literature. Its truths, let's see. One hot spring, the devil arrives in Moscow, accompanied by a retinue that includes a beautiful naked witch and an immense talking black cat with a fondness for chess and vodka. The visitors quickly wreak havoc in a city that refuses to believe in either God or Satan, but they also bring peace to two unhappy Muscovites. One is the Master, a writer pilloried for daring to write a novel about Christ and Pontius Pilate. The other is Margarita, who loves the Master so deeply that she is willing literally to go to hell for him. Anyway, so like, the fantasy, you know, heaven and hell and the devil and whatever elements already intrigues me. And then also, like, especially now, I'm super curious about reading classical subversive literature that has come out of Russia in the past. Like, I don't know, I don't want to spend too much energy specifically seeking it out, but also, like, if I could see someone having the reaction of, like, why would you want to have anything to do with, like, Russian literature right now? And it's like, well, art has always been revolutionary. Art is always political. So I think there is something to be said for embracing the part of a culture that has always been counter to what we're critical of. It's like we from the rest, it's like, you know, we as outsiders will lob all these criticisms at a government, at a situation, at a group of people. But I also wonder, like, how much do we listen to the people kind of within that community who have already been critical of it, who have already been revolutionary in their own way? Now, this book was written against, like, the Soviet state, which is quite different than what we're dealing with now. But I'm intrigued by the notion of writers and other art that has existed in opposition to the current power. And this is not, like, unique to Russia. Actually, I think... Oh, I already put it away. In my February wrap-up, I was talking about the book Reading Lolita in Tehran, which was a memoir of a classic literature professor, female professor, who was... This book was kind of documenting her time in Iran, in Tehran, when the conservative Islamic State was imposing a lot of fundamental beliefs into that culture. So seeing her, especially the way that she used literature and the concept of curiosity and critical analysis as a form of resistance. And I think there's kind of parallel themes in, like, pursuing... I've made my point somewhere in there. Let's not ramble on too long. I'm a little bit scared, I think, because I think I saw Lena Norm's video where she was, like, ranking every classic she's ever read, and she did not have a good experience with this. I also wonder, like, did she try to read it on her own? Versus did she try to read it in a class? Versus what was, like, the teacher in that class like? Because, like, I know that there's definitely books that, like, I've tried to read on my own and I didn't fucking get it. But then, like, I had to read it again for a class, or I read, like, a literary analysis of it, and then suddenly, like, my perspective kind of changed. Anyway, I'm intrigued. I'm gonna give it a try. I don't know when. Sometime soon? Maybe this year? I don't know. But also, like, this cover. Can I just... Maybe I'm just gonna, like, have this cover. Okay. The next book I acquired, this was a pre-order. I ordered Bitter by Akweke Emezi. This is the prequel to the book Pet. So this follows Pet's mother, Jam, when she is kind of a young, burgeoning activist. I have heard quite, like, mixed reviews about it, and I think a lot of it is... It's very different from Pet. So there was a part of me that's like, maybe I want to reread Pet before I read this. I'm like, no, I'm gonna let this be its own experience, and, like, not reread Pet. And I'm gonna wonder if that's actually going to serve me well. That it's been a while since I've read the companion book. If that helps this book stand on its own merits and not constantly be in comparison to it. But I really enjoy Akweke Emezi's writing. And yes, great. Okay, so then next is a book that my dad lent me, because my uncle had left it at his house and was like, do you have any interest in reading this? Because I kind of want to read it, but, like, not in the near future. This is Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. This is, I think, like, the prequel. Yeah, the prequel to Practical Magic. I haven't read the book, but I saw the movie many years ago, and I enjoyed it. So I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, free book. My interest in it was enough that, hey, if it's free, if you're literally already putting it in my hands, great, yes, I will add it to my monthly stack. So, I don't know. Oh my god, this is blurbed by Toni Morrison, Jodi Picoult, and Amy Tan. That's pretty high praise. That's pretty high praise, I would say. So, yeah, this is like an author that's, I enjoyed the world and concept of the Practical Magic movie, and I was interested to read either this one, because I saw this one had just come out, or the original Practical Magic book. We'll see. And then another free book, I found this floating around my office, and I'm like, this is clearly without an owner, and this is an author I would like to read, so if I put it on my shelf, maybe I'll actually read it in the near future. This is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Oh wait, I need to look up how to pronounce this name, because it's Brazilian, or Portuguese, I believe, which my Spanish instincts of pronunciation are gonna get it wrong.
Paulo Coelho.
Coelho? Okay. Coelho. Paulo Coelho. So he's just kind of been on my radar. Also, I'm trying to read like at least one translated book a month. Those goals are, I'm doing okay with them. I'm not worrying about it too much. I'm mood reading a lot. So I'm not hitting all my prompts. But it helps if I have a physical book for me to always be looking at. Because here is my bed. And then here is my to be read shelf. So if this book kind of like stares at me all the time, I'm probably more likely to read it. Anyway, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Let's see, what is the blurb? This story, dazzling in its powerful simplicity and soul-stirring wisdom, is about an Andalusian shepherd boy named Santiago who travels from his homeland in Spain to the Egyptian desert in search of a treasure buried near the pyramids. Along the way, he meets a Roma, traveler woman. Doesn't use that word, but it is of its time. A man who calls himself king, and an alchemist, all of whom point Santiago in the direction of his quest. No one knows what the treasure is, or if Santiago will be able to surmount the obstacles in his path. But what starts out as a journey to find worldly goods turns into a discovery of the treasure found within. I don't know, maybe this is going to have like parallel folklore vibes? I'll see. Okay. And then the last book I acquired is a used copy. Again, something I bought off Pango. That is The Damned by Renee Ahdieh. I read The Beautiful for a vampire reading vlog in like October of last year. I had a lot of fun with the books in that vlog. I actually really enjoyed The Beautiful. I was kind of like, I thought I was gonna like enjoy it, but I also knew that like it was very YA romance heavy, which can be really hit or miss for me. I'm kind of like, YA romance is like, if that's, there's got to be a lot of other things I'm more interested in order for me to be willing to give the YA romance aspect a shot. But I really liked it. I really liked the atmosphere and the writing style. So here's book 2. I know book 3 is out, and book 4, I believe, is coming out later this year. So I'm excited to continue with the series. Oh no, I did not get this from Pango. Oh, I remember where I got this. I got this from my local indie bookstore that carries new and used books, and they had posted like a photo of their YA section of the used book. I saw this. So they posted that photo, and I saw this. I saw the spine in the photo. This is like the middle of the week. So I'm like, all right, this weekend I have to go out there. I think that was maybe that was when I was, oh, don't throw books. Oh no. I think it was when I was picking up my pre-order of Bitter that I beelined it to their used YA section to see if this was still there, and it was. So 'twas meant to be. I don't know. I really like those like little coincidence, fated, it was meant to be kind of scenarios. They just make me really happy. Okay, that's it. That's the video. Alright, if you've made it to the end of the video, can you leave me a cat emoji? That would be awesome. Also, let me know, have you read any of these? Do you have any of them that you'd like to gush about or rant about? So I can be forewarned before going into them. I'd love to hear it. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I encourage you to go out into the world and be curious. I will have my social media and I will have my social media and other places where you can find me in the description box below. I also have some like social justice links and resources just in the description box. You know the drill. Anyway, I will catch you folks in my next video. Bye!